Tennessee in-state 5-star quarterback Jared Curtis out of Nashville Christian School to be specific, has committed to Georgia. Curtis was down to Georgia and Oregon. Alabama was making a run for him too. He stands at 6'3.5", 225 pounds. Is the number 2 rated quarterback on 247 Sports Composite, the number 1 rated quarterback in the nation, and the number 1 rated quarterback in the state of Tennessee. Doesn't even look like Tennessee was on his radar that much. Is this a concern for Tennessee that Jared Curtis, an in-state guy, committed to Georgia? That is What the H, brought to you by Double D Piping. Tennessee made a splash 2 years ago, or last year, when they got the commitment from George McIntyre, who's from the Nashville area too. I still believe in him as the future for the Vols, honestly. But it is coming across that the news with Nico may be giving Tennessee more trouble with quarterbacks on the trail than we initially thought. Now, let's be fair on this. When Archie Manning committed to Texas, none of us cared. None of us thought it was a big deal. We know the Mannings like to be developed. It is very possible Jared Curtis prefers the idea of being developed in a system for the NFL rather than putting up the video game numbers. Now, the narrative is out there on that because of Nico Iamaleava. And Nico Iamaleava, we don't believe firmly is about that, because otherwise he never would have committed to Tennessee in the first place. He committed to Tennessee to put up the big video game numbers. So I have to say that I think that Jared Curtis, his decision to do that could be more legitimate. The other point we have to make is that Faizon Brandon is a member of the Tennessee 2025 recruiting class. But at the same time, Faizon Brandon has been dropping a little bit in recruiting rankings recently, and Jared Curtis is ranked higher than Faizon Brandon on 247 Sports Composite. He's the number 1 quarterback. Jared Curtis is the number 1 quarterback. Faizon Brandon is the number 2 quarterback. Faizon Brandon is 6'3.5", 197 pounds. Curtis, 225 pounds. Brandon out of North Carolina. Now, to be fair, it's a different story on the generic, just standard 247 Sports, not composite. Faizon Brandon is the number 1 recruit in the nation on 247 Sports. Also, there's been recent talk about Faizon Brandon. ESPN's Tom Luganville talked about recently what Brandon can bring, and he said, quote, "The departure of Nico Iamaleava could allow Brandon to battle for the starting job sooner rather than later in a very quarterback-friendly system. Several recent Volunteers quarterbacks have similar stature, athleticism, and arm strength. Brandon is more advanced than Hendon Hooker at the same stage, and the pair share several traits. Brandon is also much more accurate than Joe Milton. While he lacks Iamaleava's polish at this stage, Brandon throws an exceptional deep ball, which is a requirement in this scheme that loves to attack vertically." Yes, the deep ball is the big deal. That's a good sign for Faizon Brandon. However, again, Jared Curtis is an in-state guy. Now, when Tennessee lost out on Ty Simpson to Alabama years ago, this would have been 2021, I believe, a big deal was made out of it at the time, but this was when Josh Heupel was still building the program at Tennessee. He hadn't had the magical 2022 season yet, so I think people let that slide. Had it happened 2 years later, people would have had a bigger deal with it, okay? Ty Simpson committed, if I remember correctly, and you guys can correct me on this, I believe he was in the 2021 recruiting class. No, excuse me. He was in the 2022 recruiting class. Okay, and then he redshirted. So Ty Simpson still has 2 years of eligibility left. But that was somewhat of a big deal, even though Heupel's program hadn't really gotten going yet, okay? Now that it's going, Jared Curtis committing seems like a big deal. So I'm going to put up this poll question. First, who was Tennessee's biggest spring transfer portal loss? 44% of you say Nico Iamaleava, 33% say Jacoby Thomas, 17% say Larry Johnson III, and 6% say John Slaughter. The next poll question is going to be this, and this is a big one here, guys. How big of a deal is it that in-state 5-star QB Jared Curtis committed to Georgia? We'll say huge embarrassment. I'll say how big of a deal is it for Tennessee? And we'll say huge embarrassment. And then we'll also say no big deal No big deal. Faizon Brandon. Vols have Faizon Brandon. That's how we're going to say this, okay? So we're going to go huge embarrassment, no big deal, Vols have Faizon Brandon. I'll let you guys vote on that. Again, keep in mind that Curtis is more highly rated than Brandon on the 247 Sports composite, okay? Now, at the same time, Faizon Brandon does throw a good deep ball. The comparisons to Hendon Hooker do sound nice, particularly since both are from North Carolina. You could believe in that. Faizon Brandon, in terms of mobility, did have 528 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns in 2023. So Faizon Brandon is also athletic, whereas Jared Curtis, I believe, is somewhat athletic, but isn't known for his mobility in the same way. They're not going to design run games for Jared Curtis. They could for Faizon Brandon the way they did for Hendon Hooker. Okay. And I'm starting to think more and more that mobility is kind of a big deal if you're in this system, given what we've seen so far with Josh Heupel. I actually think the mobility is a bigger deal than we're letting on. So I think part of Joe Milton's problem was he wasn't willing to run as much as he needed to in 2023. And Nico ran awkwardly last year. Although, again, there's other issues for Nico Emaliava that we've detailed. So you guys vote on the poll question. How big of a deal is it for Tennessee that in-state 5-star QB Jared Curtis committed to Georgia? Huge embarrassment. No big deal. Vols have Faizon Brandon. What the H, brought to you by Double D Piping Fire Protection Contractors, providing around-the-clock service, protecting their customers' lives and properties at all times. DoubleDPiping.com. DoubleDPiping.com.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
The poll question, how big of a deal is it for Tennessee that in-state 5-star quarterback Jared Curtis committed to Georgia? Huge embarrassment, say 18%. 82% say no big deal, Vols have Faizon Brandon. I'm leaning on the no big deal, Vols have Faizon Brandon. And if they don't, they still have Jake Merklinger and George McIntyre. McIntyre's another in-state quarterback. I think Curtis committed out of the desire of the type of offense he wants to play in, which is fine. Okay, so I'm not as worried for Tennessee about this one. Travis brings up a good point, though. I'm going to point this out. Travis says it's too full. He says, I always prefer an in-state kid, and I hate that he would go to Georgia or Florida. Travis, I understand that. It's not just that he committed to, or that he didn't commit to Tennessee. Excuse me. It's that he would go to Georgia at the same time, and that is kind of a big deal. Okay, so I think that losing out on Jared Curtis does have some negatives to it. But again, Faizon Brandon, while he has been dropping somewhat based on his play last year, which wasn't as flashy as it was in 2023 at the high school level, he's still very highly rated across a lot of services. If you just go to On3 real quick, and I'm going to pull that up, Faizon Brandon's On3 reporting. He, again, comes from Grimsley High School in North Carolina. I mean, the guy is still pretty much a 5-star across the board. Okay, so I think that I don't think there's too much to worry about. The industry ranking for On3 is 5-star as well. Faizon Brandon is a 5-star on On3. He's a 5-star on 247. On Rivals, he is a 5-star. And then on ESPN, I believe he's a 5-star too. We're going to look up Faizon Brandon on ESPN. He is still listed as a pocket passer, but he has mobility. He's a 5-star on ESPN too. By the way, even Nico Emaliava wasn't a 5-star across all 4 services. So Faizon Brandon is a 5-star across all 4 services. Nico Emaliava wasn't that. Jared Curtis may be ranked higher in the 247 Sports composite, but Faizon Brandon, because they already have Faizon, and Jake Merklinger and George McIntyre should be there next year. There will probably be an open competition for the starting quarterback job. If Tennessee doesn't make the college football playoff, I think Heupel will nudge Joey Aguilar to go ahead and declare for the NFL draft. I think that with that in mind, Mac, Merck, Faizon are going to have an open competition. And I think with that, they don't really have to worry about Jared Curtis going forward. And Again, Jared Curtis is probably looking to be coached in a different type of system, which is why he chose to go to Georgia. And I don't think Tennessee has to worry about that too much. The poll question, how big of a deal is it for Tennessee that in-state 5-star quarterback Jared Curtis committed to Georgia? Now 76% say no big deal. Vols have Faizon Brandon, and 24% are saying huge embarrassment. Yeah, huge embarrassment. I'm not. I'm actually. I was on the negative for the Vol fans in the last one, but I'm on the positive for this one. I think it's no big deal. The Vols have Faizon Brandon. I think they're going to be okay.